Hello and welcome to the Big Yearning podcast, released alternate Mondays at 5 p.m. UK time. We are two life coaches who really enjoy meaningful conversations about big questions. Our work and our lives have been shaped by these questions, and they've taken us to some amazing places in our lives and in ourselves. We all long for things. We all carry big yearnings in our hearts, and over the next hour or so, we hope to touch on some of these feelings and perhaps give you ideas or insights to help you get clearer about what you long for and how to get it. Hello everybody, welcome to episode 26, which is the final episode in the first year of the Big Yearning podcast. We've been going for a year now. My name is Alexander, and I'm the one who's relentlessly pushing to get the most out of life, but I'm not always great at stopping, resting, and appreciating the moment.
And my name's Neil. I'm the one who's good at embracing paradox and uncertainty, but sometimes can be found sitting on the fence.
So, welcome everybody. If you are a long-time listener of The Big Yearning, then welcome back. I hope you're doing great today. And if you're discovering us for the first time, then welcome. We're really glad you're here. It's really, really nice to have you guys listening. And when we get feedback through our Facebook and Instagram accounts, or when people drop us emails, it's just wonderful to know you guys are getting a lot out of these podcasts. And sometimes people ask us to talk about particular topics or to maybe change the style of the way we're doing things. And we've allowed this to evolve over the last year based a lot on your feedback. So thank you everyone who gets involved with us, who gives us feedback, who drops us messages. It's really important. And if there's something you would like us to talk about, then please do feel free to engage with us. We love it when people do that. So welcome. Hope you're sitting comfortably or standing comfortably or doing the washing up or whatever it is you're doing right now. And yes, join us in our little discussion today. We'll get on to our main topic in a minute, but we're going to begin, as we do every episode, with our check-ins. Just to give you an idea about what a check-in is, why we do this, why do we take up time in this podcast, why do we begin by talking about ourselves? Well, it's got a lot to do with honesty and accountability. It's making sure that we who are holding this space, who are talking to you about this subject, we remain on the ground, human and real about the way that we are and the way that we're showing up. Neil and I very much believe we're well past the age of sort of the gurus who were very big in the 80s when it was all the rage to have very important people stand up and tell us how the world works. We're well past that, and Neil and I have a lot of experience and a lot of ideas to share with you, but it's really important to us that we stay real and we stay accountable. We check in with each other on a regular basis. A check-in is really just an opportunity to let everybody who is involved in the check-in just speak and be heard and be witnessed. And the invitation is always to speak authentically and honestly without rehearsal, and just to see what comes, and just allow yourself to share and speak. It's a really powerful tool that we both kind of picked up through our work at Embercombe, where we used to work years ago, and we continue to do that in our just between ourselves and with some other friends now. And we like to begin the podcast with this. It's also just nice to let you guys know what we're up to, what's going on, and keep you up to date with everything. So, with that little bit of introduction, Neil, do you want to check in, mate?
Thank you, Alexander. I'm really well right now. I've had a lovely day strolling out around the lanes of Frome. The sun's out. It's been my first day in my shorts and sandals, so that's been really good after quite a lot of rain this week. And yeah, I've had a pretty good week. I've had a few work-related challenges, nothing kind of specific, but in my work, I'm facing quite a lot of challenges. I'm having to stretch myself quite a bit at the moment. I seem to be encountering new things on a regular basis, and I seem to have to go through this process of falling apart a bit, getting frustrated and a bit angry and wound up and irritable, maybe not very nice to live with. But when I get through that and I kind of break through something and I do something, I go towards the stuff I've been avoiding, then lo and behold, I find that I have more strength and more resilience. So I feel like I'm learning a lot about myself at the moment. Like I said, some of the stuff that I'm having to do is quite a steep learning curve in terms of a lot of newness. And I feel really good about myself as someone who feels stronger and feels more resilient. There's a kind of palpable sense of it. I can feel like I'm standing a bit taller, like I'm speaking a little bit more confidently, even if I'm more confident about what I don't know, you know. Um, so that's good. Um, I've had a few challenges, funnily enough, on my narrative coaching course, in that I've really struggled to kind of get to grips with some of the material. On the course, we're about halfway through now. Modules 1 and 2 were really, really right up my street, very familiar sort of stuff. But the last two modules have been stuff which I've really found it difficult to get hold of and or to get to grips with rather. And I've got quite frustrated with myself, I've got quite angry with myself. I've been berating myself a little bit, sort of wagging my internal finger at myself, saying, you really should be doing better, Neil. You should be understanding this more. But actually, it's been quite a humbling learning experience because I've sort of come up short against myself. And I've had to say, right, okay, I don't fully get a lot of this stuff. How am I going to understand it? What support do I need? And I'm pleased that I did reach out to get some support. So I had a one-to-one with one of the course trainers and was just able to speak about why it really matters to me, and thinking about it. I believe that I only really get frustrated and angry about something if it really matters. If it didn't really matter, then there wouldn't be such an emotional charge about it. So the narrative coaching course is really important to me because I feel like I've discovered a way of working that really fits with me. I mean, I say to people, I wish I had discovered this stuff 20 or 30 years ago. But then thinking about it, it's fine that I've discovered it now, I was doing other stuff. But it really matters to me. So it's not surprising that there's a kind of charge with me around it sometimes. So that's something that's up for me. Also, I must give you an update about the blackbirds. The blackbirds in the garden are doing great. There are 4 lovely little chicks. They've kind of gone past their phase of looking like little dinosaur velociraptor type things. And now they've got feathers and stuff. And really interestingly, I think, I put some photos on Facebook and I got one comment on Facebook saying, please be aware of not getting too close when you take photographs because you might spook the mum and dad. And really, it's really interesting, Alexander, because I got that Facebook post. I thought, I kind of took umbrage at it, thinking, who are you to tell me what to do in my own back garden? Rah, 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 rah. But then when I kind of got off of that particular hobby horse, I thought, no, fair enough. So it was a good message that came in, and I've been a bit more aware since then of not interfering too much. I do go out and kind of look at them from a distance, and I get a bit worried when there's no mummy or daddy on the nest, but it seems to me that they're spending more time off the nest because they both need to go out and get food to feed the chicks, and they do return. So that's really good. So that continues to bring me a great deal of joy, just going out in the morning, saying hello from a distance, going out in the evening, saying goodnight from a distance, and just really kind of wishing them well as creatures in this world, in my world. I'm still not sure how I'm going to react to predation if it does occur, but I'll keep people posted on that. And then last thing to say is that I went to see my dad for the second time since lockdown began on Monday, and that feels good just to be getting back into the routine of regular contact. Took him down a small bottle of brandy again and several bars of dairy milk. Those are the things that kind of keep him happy, and also a box of chocolates for the care home staff because I think that's really important. And yeah, it was good. It was good to see him. We still can't go outside yet in terms of taking him out into town, but hopefully maybe by the next visit, which will be his 93rd birthday on the 2nd of July, hopefully by that time we might be able to go out into town with him. So yeah, that's what's going on in my life at the moment. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah, 93 is extraordinary. That's amazing to have lived that long. Okay, on to my check-in. I will also begin by talking about the weather. I don't know whether that's a particularly British thing, but the last, gosh, I don't know how long it is, 3, 4, 5 weeks, it's just been raining. Or it seems like it's just been raining. It certainly hasn't felt like May, end of May. It certainly hasn't felt like the beginning of summer. It's felt bleak and cold, and I'm in Brighton here. I live right by the sea. Stepping out the front door, it's like being hit with this wall of wind. And then today, just everything changed. The skies cleared, the temperature has shot up, the wind has died down. It suddenly feels like summer, and I'm really looking forward to getting back in the water. I love being in the sea, but I am a bit of a wuss when it comes to swimming in the winter. So now it's nice and warm. I'm going to be spending a lot of time in the sea. On Saturday, I'm going to be hosting a barbecue with a whole bunch of friends on the beach. We all turn up with our barbecues, and we make sure to clear them away. We're very conscientious about that. But yeah, just really enjoying social time, more time with my friends, and yeah, just looking forward to something that isn't, we will go to a pub and we will have a couple of drinks. Just that idea of we all show up on the beach and we're there for as long as we want to be there. Maybe we drink, but maybe we don't. Maybe we just enjoy each other's company, enjoy the sun, enjoy the warmth, enjoy the setting of the sun, enjoy going in the water. Just those simple things, they're so important. And I'm really, really excited to get back to all that. I had my first vaccine a few days ago, and it really knocked me out for a few days. I mean, I didn't have a lot of the fallout that some people have been having. I didn't have big flu-like symptoms, but I've just felt this really high level of fatigue. And then today is the first day I've really bounced back. So today I've been bouncy and fun and silly and ridiculous. And while Neil and I were warming up for the podcast today, I was being very silly. So we'll see if that comes through in today's podcast or not. And it's also just left me feeling with more reserves, I guess. I think it's because I had to stop for a few days. I was exhausted and I had to rest, and I let myself eat more calories. And now I've just come back and I've got this huge reserves of energy and bouncy, and I feel bold and I feel confident and I feel ready to really take the world on and do some really great things. So yeah, just feeling motivated and focused and driven today. I think that would be a good way to put it. Various frustrating things going on for me. Last time in the podcast, I talked about a photo shoot that I have coming up. That got delayed because of that awful weather. So there's a 2-week delay on that. My website is a little bit delayed. All sorts of things are just taking longer than I want to. And I'm really having to have a lot of faith and a lot of trust. And it's made me re-inquire into my spiritual practice, actually. And that's not something I talk about on here a lot. I don't want to alienate people. I don't want to turn off people who don't have a spiritual practice or don't feel like it has any relevance for them. But it is important to me. It has been really important to me. I mean, my degree was in theology, and I think I struggle to marry up practical day-to-day life with a sense of spirit, a sense of faith, a sense of grace in my life, this kind of idea that my life is touching in with something eternal, something more than human. So there's all these frustrations and things going on, and it's become increasingly important to me as I'm getting older and as I'm returning back to bigger and bigger challenges in my life. Just to have this sense that I'm connected with something greater, that there is a deeper purpose and meaning to my life, and that I'm connected with something beyond the human, beyond just myself. I'm not just this one willing being pushing myself through my life, but I am being held and supported, and that things will become available to me when I bring everything into alignment and when I feel in harmony with my purpose. That's a kind of clumsy way to put it, but it's something I'm really trying to hold on to, just as all these frustrations keep coming up. Last time on the podcast, I was talking about how there's so much background work that goes behind a big launch and a big push. And my book is, needs a lot of work in terms of promoting. It's a whole world that I had to learn about. It's such a saturated market. There's so many books. And unless you're famous or you've got a famous person sponsoring you, your book is just one of thousands sat on a list on a website. And why would anybody discover it? Why would anyone choose to buy that one instead of the one that the celebrities are promoting or the one that's already famous? So it's this tremendous challenge and an opportunity to really carve out a niche for myself there. But it takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of drive, and it takes a lot of pushing. And I really, I'm finding more and more I need this sense of faith, this idea that it's not just me doing this. There is this Mac, who founded Embercoom, where Neil and I met, and that we've spoken out quite a few times, has this phrase, something like, if you take a step towards life, she will take 10 towards you. And the idea that if there's alignment and if there is directedness in our lives and a sense of surrender and trust, then we will get supported and we will get held, and our efforts will be multiplied. So that might all sound very wishy-washy and woo-woo to some people, but and actually, often to me that sounds wishy-washy and woo-woo, and I could be very critical of these things and very cynical, but it's this progressive learning journey for me of just being able to be more comfortable with that and be more accepting of it and more trusting of it. So, yeah, that's big for me at the moment. And I think through that bit of a ramble, I've probably covered all the things that are up for me at the moment: the photo shoot, the website, the book, and there's so much going on, and behind it, the sense of growing trust. So, yeah, that's my check-in.
Thank you. Thanks, Alexander.
Okay, let's get on to today's topic. So today, we're going to be talking about believing in yourself, about self-belief, and really what we'd like to do. I mean, what this podcast is always trying to do is stir up stuff, lift stones and see what's wriggling underneath, explore ideas, deconstruct things that we just, we don't really think about, we say, or we believe, but we don't really think about them. Just a deeper inquiry and an opportunity to reflect on things in a new way. So today we'd like to talk about believing in yourself, self-belief. We'll get on in a moment to a definition. We have our definition guru, Neil, who is primed and ready to go.
Primed.
But what we'd like to leave you with today is just more of an understanding, or at least some ideas about what it means to believe in yourself, what self-belief actually is, and how to develop it. If you're listening to this and I've brought this topic up and maybe you're immediately thinking, I'm not sure I have a lot of that, or I don't have as much as I used to, or I'd like more, or no, I feel just fine about this, but I would like to be able to support others and encourage others. Maybe there's someone in your life who doesn't believe in themselves as much as maybe they could. Maybe you've got a sibling or a parent or a friend or a co-worker who could really do with a bit more faith in themselves. So we're going to try and give some ideas about how you go about developing more of this stuff. So I'm going to hand over to our definition guru. So a couple of things for you here, Neil. The first one, could you give us a definition? But also, could you just to get this conversation rolling, could you say something about why is it important to talk about this?
Sure. Yeah, okay. To start with, definition of self-belief that I came across is self-belief is confidence in your own abilities or judgment. Now, what I like about that is its brevity and its simplicity. There's no kind of ambiguity in that statement, so it's very clear. Self-belief is confidence in your own abilities or judgment. Now, okay, why is it important? Well, for me, it's important because you have to have some sense of believing in yourself in order to get things done on a day-to-day basis, also in terms of long-term goals and aims and aspirations that you have for yourself. It's very difficult to kind of walk out into the world and achieve things and get stuff done if you're kind of in a crouched position where you don't really feel like you are worthy or of value, or like you don't belong, those kinds of things that we've talked about a lot in these podcasts. And I think for me, self-belief goes along with things like, well, I think it aids clarity of purpose. I think self-belief also is a core component of having an identity, of forming an identity, of an identity that is evolving. And I think fundamentally, like I said, it's difficult to kind of walk out into the world if you don't have a degree of self-assuredness, a degree of sure-footedness, a sense that I believe in myself, I'm good enough, I'm here, I'm of value, I can contribute, I can make a difference. It's very difficult to act in the world in all of those ways if you don't have some sense of believing in your own abilities and your own capacity to make judgments, to make choices that serve a particular purpose or aim. Yeah. And I also would just like to I came across this quote from Gandhi, not Gandalf,
Not Gandalf.
not
No, I
Gandalf.
was very excited for a Gandalf quote.
Yes, yes. Alexander, in the prep for this podcast, misheard, and he did get very, very excited when he thought I might be saying something from Gandalf. But maybe the next episode you can find a Gandalf quote and you can bring that.
Okay.
But for now, we'll go with Gandhi,
done.
Mahatma Gandhi, who said, "Your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values become your destiny." So the starting point is, in terms of self-belief kind of is constructed of the kind of cognitive kind of thoughts, the cognitive patterns, if you like, that go towards you understanding who and what you are. That's a starting point. And so Gandhi is saying that that's the starting point. And if you don't get that bit right, if that bit isn't lined up, then neither will be your words, your actions, your habits, the expression of who you are in the world. Do you have any thoughts on that, even though it's not a Gandalf quote?
Yeah, it's fine. I will be showing up with a Gandalf quote next time. I guess the way that I think about this is it's often a thing in the coaching world and I think this was one of the 7 habits of highly effective people, was begin with the end in mind. So we often encourage people to think about visions, to think about end results, to think about where you want to be, and then you backtrack from there. So if sort of the final step is achieving your dreams, and then before that there is being consistent in your behavior to move you in the direction of those dreams, and then before that there's initiating your behavior at all, initiating the steps, taking the bold, scary first steps, and then before that there is this dreaming, imagining and wondering phase. I really see that's a really effective way to get places we want to get in our lives, and all of that is really predicated on the idea that any of this is possible. If I think about myself at times in my life when I have had pretty low self-belief, because I've been there and I've spent a lot of my life not really believing that I could, or that I had the capacity to do things. And if I think about now, people who I know in my life who don't have a lot of belief in themselves, then to even move them in the direction of thinking differently, wondering, dreaming, imagining, welcoming new things into our lives, trying new things with the possibility of failure, experimenting, playing, and then eventually discovering the seam of richness that's going to take you in the direction you want to go. All of that is predicated on the idea that I believe in my capacity to even try, to even begin, to even wrestle with any of these questions. So I really feel like this is important stuff. Like, without this, we don't initiate. So there's a really important stage in anything when it's even just when it's the dreaming phase, when it's beginning to get moving, and it's this initiation step. It's when you actually step out into the world, or dare to dream something new, or dare to think about something in a new way, or dare to confront old beliefs. It's the initiation, it's the choosing to act. And it's really hard to do that if you don't believe that you can. So it's a fundamental thing, and it frees up so much if you can just have some faith in yourself, some belief in your abilities and your judgments. That really gets us going. So that leads me on to thinking, how do we get more of it? How does this stuff grow? How do we foster more belief in ourselves? Okay, firing this back to you, Neil. What do you think about that?
I think, I came across in the research for this episode, Alexander, a framework offered by a guy called Albert Bandura, working in the late 90s. He's one of the proponents of positive psychology. So he's a colleague of Martin Seligman, who's probably the biggest name in positive psychology. And he provides this framework, which I found really, really useful. And so I'd like to kind of just speak to that a moment. He says that there are 4 elements, 4 facets or factors that contribute towards the formation of self-belief and improving your self-belief, your belief in yourself. The first one is mastery experiences. which very simply put is trying stuff, practicing stuff until you reach a master or a expert or highly proficient kind of status with that thing. The second aspect is vicarious experiences. So that really is talking about observing other people who are really good at stuff and learning from them. That's where like role models and exemplars come in. And as I go through these four, and there's an additional one from someone else, another one of Albert Bandura's colleagues, I'll go through these first, and then maybe we can sort of speak to them sort of in a bit more detail. The third aspect is verbal persuasion, and I interpret that as feedback from significant others. So I might believe, I can't do this, I'm hopeless at this, I can't swim breaststroke or whatever, or I can't learn the breathing for front crawl or whatever it is, whatever skill or capacity that you're trying to master. The encouragement, the verbal persuasion, the feedback, the praise from other people is a really critical component. I certainly know that for myself, because like when I've struggled with self-belief, there's no way I would have managed to do some of the stuff without having people around me who believe in me. So again, put simply, it's about having, good, trustworthy people around you in one way. The fourth one is emotional and psychophysiological states. So what Bandura is talking about there is that basically it's very, very difficult to kind of have self-belief if you're in a mental or psychological or physiological state which is kind of, low in energy or depressed, or you're not well or something. That's just a very kind of common sense, obvious kind of thing to say. But I think the importance of that is that if, coaching people, if someone isn't in a good kind of state of mind and their kind of head is full of stuff and they're not a kind of open vessel for taking on new things, then it's very, very difficult to get them to learn new stuff and try different things. So that's a nod to that phenomenon, if you like. And then lastly, this is from another guy, a psychologist called James Maddox, who talks about imaginal experiences. So this very much relates to what you were saying about kind of dreaming the end point first. And we've talked a lot about this, like we did an episode on visioning, didn't we? So that's very much about, imagining self-efficacy through a visualized kind of experience, or you kind of project yourself into the future. You create a very, very rich and detailed story or experience in your mind of what it is that you're trying to achieve, and you kind of work towards that. So just to recap them again: mastery experiences, vicarious experiences, verbal persuasion, so praise, feedback, having an awareness of your emotional and physiological state, and imaginal experiences. Any thoughts on any of that? You don't have to start at the very beginning, Alexander, but just what pops out at you from that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, he's used very specific language throughout this. It feels quite academic to me, but that the first one, we're talking about mastery experiences, what he's calling mastery experiences. I think that's a tool that certainly I and a lot of coaches use. That's how we go about encouraging people to develop confidence and trust in themselves. Is you got to get out there and try things, and you got to keep doing them until you get the feedback from doing it with other people, from people seeing you do it, from noticing your own success, that you're getting it. You will go through, as I'm sure everyone's aware, these 4 stages of being unconsciously incompetent, and then consciously incompetent, and then unconsciously competent. You've crossed a line somewhere, and then you finally arrive at consciously competent. And there's just no shortcut. I'm going to be. I don't know how to drive. It's not a thing that was relevant for me. I went to university in London, and then it just never came up. But I intend to learn to drive. And I'm very aware, having spent so much of my life studying psychology, I'd love to be able to jump to the end of this process. But it is the necessary 4 stages of learning a thing. And yes, a lot of our self-belief, if I think about sitting in the passenger seat and watching my friends or whoever driving, the body is doing its thing. They're just confidently zipping down the road. But I know that when I sit behind the wheel of the car, I'm going to have to be consciously thinking about everything. And am I doing it right? And can I do this? And you end up being very unsure of yourself. But you keep doing it. You do the scary thing. You keep doing it, and then eventually you necessarily arrive at this state of, I've got it, and that feeling of sort of pride and satisfaction and self-reassurance that you've managed to get through that thing and that you've learned another skill, and your confidence grows. And when we were talking about comfort zones and risk zones, pushes your comfort zone out a little bit, and your confidence grows, and your belief in yourself, and sort of trust that you can handle new stuff and that you can handle this situation. And actually, that brings me on to another thing, that a lot of this ends up being generalized. So I'm using the example of learning to drive. You were talking earlier about the breathing while you're swimming. But whatever it is, having a bit of a win somewhere will generalize itself out. You'll get a general lift in your confidence and your belief in your capacity by achieving one thing, and it'll give you a little. It doesn't last. I think that's really important to say. If you don't, this aspect, the mastery aspect, if you don't continue to experiment and try new things and do the scary stuff and see yourself learn, see yourself be okay there, maybe make mistakes along the way, but finally reach this mastery point, that generalizes out, and we get this kind of sense of warmth and trust and okayness that goes along with this belief that you can handle new stuff. Look, you just did it. You made it. You've mastered a thing. Now you can carry on going. So that first one in the list that you presented, that's very much my bread and butter. That sounds very familiar, and that's how I've seen it over the last 10 years. I've seen my clients. If you encourage them to go out and do something, then it generalizes, and there's a more willingness to do things, and the whole thing can accelerate. So, yeah, I definitely think that is a big aspect in developing self-belief. I think, I think one of the things in here, what's being called here vicarious experiences or the social aspect of self-belief. I really want to hone in there on this idea of role models, because I don't know, I've always just really believed in it. I've always thought that it's a really effective way of modeling. I think this is certainly something that Tony Robbins talks about, very famous coach and a speaker. He talks about modeling being a way of being able to accelerate your learning. So you find people who are inhabiting the lifestyle or the model of success or whatever it is that you are aspiring to. You find people who are doing that, and then you model yourself on them. I think there are problems with that, but it's certainly an effective way of accelerating your growth. So I also like to do this thing where think about role models, think about characters from books or movies or people you've known who really inspired you in a particular way. Take the feeling that brings for you, or that if you put yourself in their shoes, if you sort of encapsulate the feeling of them, and then where does that sit in you? How can you bring that into you? How can you embody that somewhere within your character, within yourself, and then use that as the ignition? Maybe it's hard to believe in yourself or find that self-belief initially. So can you borrow it from somebody else? Can you find someone who seems to have it and then try and bring the feeling of them into you, and then use that to get you moving and find your self-belief as you go? That's always been something that I've kind of believed in. I don't know what you think about that, Neil.
Well, I'm very intrigued and very interested in an aspect of what you said there, Alexander. When you said, can you take that feeling? And I'm just going to give a little bit of a backstory in terms of an example here, and then talk about that a little bit more. So it made me think of a time when I was about 22. I was doing my nurse training, 23. I was coming towards the end of my nurse training. And I was working in a small sort of rehabilitation house on the outskirts of the hospital that I was working at. And the charge nurse was a really strong role model for me in the way that he spoke to the residents. And he spoke to the residents in a way that was exactly the same as he would speak to the staff. He didn't really change his vocabulary much. He didn't change his intonation. He didn't really change his demeanor that much. And I mean, I think that there were things that he was doing slightly differently, but I left his presence. Or when I used to watch him doing, interacting with one of the residents, I used to come away and I used to think, wow, that I'd love to be like that, you know, and I would love to have that degree of respect and clarity and softness and warmth in talking to the residents. And it made me think when you said about can you take that feeling and how that relates to modeling. So when I think about watching this guy was called Nick Bohannon, and I couldn't kind of quantitatively, mechanistically dissect what he was doing necessarily. I don't think that's possible, but I could take something qualitative, and I've written down the word inspiration. So it's like almost, can I let some of that in to me, and can I let that inspire me? So it's interesting that I don't quite know the work of Tony Robbins. So for me, it sounds like there's a difference between taking like a set of behaviors that might be quite kind of gross and overt and obvious to see, that you then repeat, and you kind of take on something in that way, versus a qualitative kind of sense of someone, a quality, a characteristic of someone. And it's interesting because I think I did learn something from that, because this guy Nick, he's always in my head, So I kind of like internalized his way of doing. I have a vision, I have an image of him sat in a particular room with a particular resident over 30 years ago, and it still has some leverage for me. It still has some meaning. So I was just really interested in that bit. It's not just about taking a kind of overt set of behaviors that you can dissect and pull apart. There's also something about a feeling or a quality or an inspirational quality within a role model. So yeah,
I mean, I think that there's an element of this which is natural human behavior. If you think about the development of children, and all of us when we were growing up, there were characters, whether they were people we knew, whether they were people we were watching on telly, whether they were people in books we were reading, that ended up having a formative effect on us. That something in our character is the way that it is because these other people were the way they were around us, and we just naturally, when we're very young, we're a bit of a sponge, and we soak up other people's approaches and attitudes and the feeling of who they are. That ability to empathetically sort of get a sense of who somebody is, I think, is something that we do naturally. But we often lose it, and I'm talking here about using it intentionally. So you may or may not have it, depending on how impressionable we are or how easily we take on things from people around us. But if you can intentionally activate that gene, that inherent property of being able to go, as you're saying, inspirational. If there's someone around you who inspires you in a certain way, I mean, I've always really sought people who inspired me. I originally discovered Embercombe, which we often talk about, through Mac, who was the founder, and I discovered that because I had made a friend, and she was aware that I was looking for inspiring men. It was an important part. I was in my early 20s, and I wanted men to really model off, to be able to be inspired by, to be able to capture that essence, because I was exploring my own masculinity, my own masculine identity. And I remember one day getting a call from this friend who said, "There's a guy talking in a hall in Totnes, get over here, I think this is the guy you've been looking for." And that was the beginning of my journey with Embercombe. I went over, and it was one of Mac's first public talks. So it's about that. It is very much about that. It's about finding inspirational figures. I guess we've kind of gone down a side conversation here into modelling off people, but
I think that's fine. I think that's cool. I mean, I think for me it's really interesting. For me, it's an important piece to kind of, if we're trying to get a sense of our own belief and the kind of person we want to be, then inevitably, as you say, that's an inherent sort of aspect of the social development of the human child and human teenager and human adult and so on and so forth. So I think to spend a bit of time on just kind of looking at that, for me, feels important. It feels important for me in terms of separating that bit around kind of feeling and that inspirational bit. And another, I just wanted to track back a bit in terms of the mastery element, Alexander, because when I was thinking about this, I thought about me and my woodworking skills. Okay, so I thought about, again, over 35 years ago, I think I was working for a little furniture restoring firm in Somerset, and I did it for a couple of years, and I got to a point where I think I went through that. I got to a point of unconscious competence. So a piece of furniture would come into the workshop, and I knew pretty much that in 4 or 5 days' time, I could send that piece of furniture out to the public to be sold, and it would be pucker. It would be fantastic. It would be top notch, yeah. And I talk about it now because those set of skills have kind of stayed with me. So if you give me a piece of wood, then I will kind of intuitively and instinctively know what that piece of wood is capable of in terms of its malleability, in terms of how it will take a nail, in terms of how it will take a screw, in terms of how it will bend, in terms of how much give and strength and flexibility it has, and how it will be able to be paired with other bits of wood and stuff like that. And I wanted to, so that makes me think about intuition and instinct in relation to self-belief. So I was interested in those two capacities. And then I was also thinking about the practicality. So when I mentioned in my check-in that I'd been going towards some challenging stuff in relation to my work and having to venture into lots of new areas, I found that what's been really useful is return to something where there is a lot of self-belief. So go back and do a bit of woodworking, immerse myself in an experience where I really believe in myself, in my own. So self-belief is confidence in your own abilities or judgment. Go back to a sphere where I'm good at that, and then take it back out. So like you were saying, stuff that can be generalized out. And when you talked about being able to generalize stuff out, I asked myself the question, okay, well, what exactly is it? What is that component that's being generalized out? And I answered my own question, well, it's simply self-belief that is being generalized out. So for me, there's something about touching base with an activity, an experience where you do have self-belief, where you very much feel your own confidence and competence, where you feel your own innate ability to automatically just do something with great ease and great joy that can then almost kind of, fill you up to kind of go and encounter that really challenging bit where you don't quite believe in yourself. You're giving a public talk or you're making a challenging phone call. Yeah, something for me about giving yourself experiences of things where you do experience your own kind of self-belief and competence and goodness.
Yeah, great. And I think that's a fantastic takeaway, actually. Fill up your tank of your self-belief. If you need to move into a new field, if you have to do something that's new or scary, then allow yourself to fill up your tank first. To go away and have experiences where you thrive, where you kick ass, where you do really well in something, and allow that to be the strength, to be the energy that then drives you on and carries you through maybe something new and difficult and something you don't know if you're quite ready for. I'd like to talk a little bit about choice because I'm obsessed with it. Anyone who's read my book will know that I am obsessed with choice. It's of the 12 principles that are at the heart of my book, it is principle 1. And I think the power of choice and the idea of personal freedom is essential in personal growth. So I think there's an element to self-belief which has to begin with choice. You can reach the end of a process and then reflect back and go, hey, look, I've managed to believe in myself. I now believe in myself. This is something that's come to me. But if you're moving into a new field, if you're doing something new, if you're dreaming about something new, if you are challenging yourself in a new way, there's some element of choice there. You're going to need to, I believe, choose to believe in yourself for a while, because you may not be ready. In fact, that's another one of the principles. But you may not be ready to begin this journey. In fact, you won't be. If it's anything important, you're not going to be ready at the beginning. So you're going to need to choose to trust that you're going to handle this. You're going to need to choose to believe in yourself for just a little while. There's a little bit of fake it till you make it. I'm a little bit wary of that phrase, but a little bit of I'm going to choose to believe that I can do this. And just stand in that choice for a while. Even as you do a new thing, you fail at it spectacularly, you try rollerblading, but you fall over, whatever it is. Just to hold on to that idea of belief. I think choice is maybe not a necessary thing because, we were talking earlier about doing one thing and allowing it to then be generalized out or to model yourself on other people who embody the sense of self-belief. But if you're doing something new, then I think that choice is kind of necessary. You're going to need to go, all right, I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to choose to believe that I can. But what I find is often really essential is to explore the things that hold you back from that. So if you think of yourself as someone who doesn't have a lot of self-belief, or if you know somebody, if there's someone in your mind, while Neil and I have been talking about this, who you think, I really wish they could just come to believe in themselves a bit more and try some more things or just think about themselves in a different way. If there's someone who it just kind of breaks your heart a little bit to watch them struggling with their lack of self-belief, then it's important, I think, to understand those things that hold us back, because here I am saying, well, you're just going to have to choose. You're just going to have to choose to believe in yourself. Come on. That's not really helpful if you've got stuff, if you've got maybe a history that has that's drained your self-belief. There's other things getting in the way. So some kind of exploration about what is getting in the way, what is stopping you from naturally embodying and exhibiting simply trusting yourself, simply believing that you are okay, you're going to be great, you're going to do well at this thing. Even if you screw it up for a while, you're going to be okay at the end of it. Well, what holds us back from inhabiting that place, from having those feelings? And I'm passing this back to my good friend Neil to hear his thoughts. Neil, what do you think about that? What gets in the way?
Well, one thing that comes to mind straight away is fear. I speak about that from personal experience. If I think about new things that I'm trying to do, I know that I can build up these whole kind of scenarios where things are going to be catastrophic. No one's going to like me. I'm going to get laughed at, or whatever my particular catastrophic kind of theme is. So fear is a big one for me. I think that's the primary one for me. But what I wanted to respond to in what you said, Alexander, was how I've written down parallel process. So, I echo what you say in terms of, it's necessary to do some of your own delving, if you like, or psychological, emotional work to have a look and see what is holding you back. So to do that work alongside trying something out. It's not a kind of formula whereby you have to get everything sorted in yourself, because then otherwise you would never ever try. So it's a kind of parallel process sort of thing. Fear and anxiety, those kinds of things will be the things that I think hold people back a lot, certainly from my experience.
So yeah, I agree. Alongside fear, certainly one thing that's come up for me here is past experiences, negative feedback you've had in the past. If you grow up not being told that you can do things, I think kids need quite a lot of positive reinforcement and encouragement. And the kids that I've seen develop real confidence and fire have been those where their parents just went, of course you can do this. Of course you can. Go on. You can go and do it. Yeah, you've got this. A lot of love and a lot of warmth and a lot of encouragement. I think those are some of the really strong foundations of a beginning of a life of self-belief, of believing in ourselves throughout the rest of our lives. If you can plant those seeds early, I think that has a tremendous effect. And if you didn't have those seeds planted, either if you actually had parents or figures of influence around you who told you couldn't do it, who told you not to do it, or who exhibited behavior that wasn't inspiring, or that was the opposite. I don't know what the word is, the opposite to inspiring. If anyone can think of one, please write in. But if people around you exhibited behavior that they clearly didn't believe in themselves, if you had a parent who seemed nervous all the time, or seemed resigned, or seemed switched off, or didn't dream, didn't think that they could, then I think it's very difficult to begin to resource yourself in that way. You've got to relearn how all this stuff works. If you've been primed at a young age not to think like this, or if it's been sabotaged at a young age, then I think we have to, as adults, revisit it afresh and go, okay, that's the stuff that I grew up with. That's the stuff that was modeled. That's the template that I was given. Right? That's one example of how to be. How else are people? How else do people behave? How else do people develop and exist like this? And I think that's where, reading a lot of personal development stuff and getting insights into the different ways that people think and operate and feel becomes really important. And crossing the tracks, meeting different kinds of people, meeting people who are a different age group, meeting people who come from a different background, just really beginning to shake up expectations becomes really important there. So I think that's a really important barrier to building up self-belief, is the stuff that you've received so far in your life.
Yeah, I agree. And as you were talking, I was thinking about that in terms of what gets internalized and what doesn't. So thinking about an ideal situation, an optimal sort of situation of a child growing up, they internalize the kind of praise and positive feedback from their parents and significant others around them. And I think that's where it takes me back to this verbal persuasion bit. And I agree with you, Bandura's kind of titles are a little bit kind of academic. So for verbal persuasion, read, praise and positive feedback, basically. And for me, if you've had a life where you haven't necessarily had a lot of that, it will probably mean that you need a lot more of it to get that sense of self-belief. So there's a kind of proportionate relationship. I think I'm kind of saying it's similar to stuff to what you've said, Alexander, but for me it's kind of an equation. It's like there's a proportionality. Like if you haven't had a lot of this stuff, then you'll probably need a lot more of it right now. I mean, I know from examples in my own life where I have a very low sort of belief in my ability to do something, yet I get repeated feedback from other people that, what are you talking about, Neil? You can do this. But somehow that's not the point. It's kind of like somehow it doesn't go in. So the task here for me is you weren't able to kind of internalize the voices of significant others that may have been absent previously in your life, but that doesn't mean that all is lost. It means that there are other voices from other people currently in your life that you can internalize. So for me, that's really, really important. And I think with that, patience and perseverance is really important. And also, it reminds me of what you were saying about comfort zone, risk zone, panic zone, and that kind of spectrum in terms of its degree and in terms of its degree of challenge and its timing and duration, how long it takes, that will be different for everyone. So for someone, stepping out of their safety zone into a risk zone might be a tiny, tiny step. For other people, which might take a long time. For other people, it might be something more rapid. I'm saying this because it's about making your own journey your very own, which are dependent on your own life circumstances, both past and present.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very conscious of time, and we're probably coming up to the end of our podcast today. So as we've been talking, I've written down a few sort of takeaway points of like things that might be useful for our lovely listeners. So I'm going to read off a few of those, but also, Neil, if you want to chime in with some, what would you like people to take away from this? I think that would be a really good way to end this. So a few of the ones that I've got here are reflect on your past and uncover the origins of the things that maybe stole or sabotaged or poisoned or at least limited your self-belief. Challenge these beliefs as much as you can. And if you need to get healing, if you need to speak to somebody about replacing those beliefs with new ones, or just being able to air what happened to you so that you can move beyond it, then that's a very important and worthwhile thing to do. Find people who embody the self-belief that you'd love to exhibit in your life, and then see if you can find the feeling behind that and bring it into yourself a little bit, claim a little bit of that identity for yourself. Trust that as you do new things, as you challenge yourself, and as you grow through the challenging and the new experiences, that this will increase your self-belief, even if you're not noticing it's happening. That sometimes this stuff doesn't happen as we're watching it. Sometimes if you're paying too much attention, nothing seems to change. But when you look back, everything is different. So just trust that as you're doing these new things, as you're trying and experimenting with new things in your life, that your self-belief, your confidence in your ability to be okay and to trust your own abilities and judgments will grow. Consciously accept positive feedback. Actually, this is one that you said to me in our preparation, Neil. Consciously make yourself accept positive feedback and keep a record of the nice things that people say about you. Anything you want to add to that?
No, just to echo it, really. I mean, that's a real practice in itself. I mean, I was working with a client just the other day who had real problems with just accepting positive feedback. But this person's actually managed to do a bit of a journey for themselves and got to a place where they consciously have learned how to pause, how to breathe in, breathe out over 4-second inhalation, 4-second exhalation, to really anchor it in a very physical way to create enough time and space in their consciousness to receive a positive comment. So it has to be
that's really nice. Yeah. Another thing I have here is get used to the discomfort of leaving the comfort zone. Let that become normal for you. Don't get too settled. And then I think the final one I have, and actually written it in block caps, is that this is a call to get to know yourself. Through something like journaling or through exploring personal development material, whatever it is, this is a call to inquire into yourself. What is your relationship with your belief in yourself? Where did it come from? Where did the foundations of it come from? What feeds your belief in yourself, and how can you get more of that? And the more you know yourself, which often begins a quite painful journey because we immediately start noticing all the critical things, but if you power on through that, then you may start noticing more and more things that will help you to develop your belief in yourself. So, as often happens in this podcast, there's a real call to meet yourself, get to know yourself, and a call to self-awareness. Those are all the things, sort of takeaways that I had. Is there anything you want to add to that lot, Neil?
I think there's one thing I want to add, which we've already mentioned, and one other thing just to very much echo and agree with you. The first one is this idea about giving yourself experiences where your self-belief is strong. I think that's really important. Invariably, those kinds of experiences are likely to be ones that you enjoy. So it's about, yes, I can do this. I'm good at this. I love this. I feel very natural doing this. It feels like second nature. It feels like who I am. To replenish, to fill up that reservoir of self-belief so that, as you said, Alexander, that then can be generalized out, or that's, that can be applied to other situations. That's the first thing. And the second thing is for me, a real learning in this podcast, actually, that sense of that feeling quality in relation to role models or exemplars. That's a real learning for me. So, yeah, I echo what you say. Have a look at other people, look around in your immediate social network or within the wider world. And who really inspires you? Who really makes you feel something special and unique and excited? And those kinds of things. So yeah, and then just let those feelings speak to you and run with them. Let them kind of internalize them, if you like. Use them as kind of way markers. Yeah, those would be my two things. Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, that's all we've got time for today. So we're just going to end up by saying thank you very much for sticking with us and for listening. Whatever you've been doing while we've been rambling away here, I hope it's gone well. And I think I can speak for Neil as well, but we really hope you got something out of today's episode. We do this for you guys, and whatever you've taken from this, I mean, if you want to, please let us know. Drop us a message on social media or drop us an email and let us know what you got out of this, or if you'd like to have a conversation about developing your belief in yourself, then that would be brilliant. So on that subject, how to get in touch with us, Neil, if someone wants to get in touch with you, well, how would they do that?
The best way to do that, Alexander, is through my website, www.coachingforlifefroome.co.uk, and go to the contact details page there.
Marvellous. Okay. And if you want to get in touch with me, then you go to my website, which is deepcoaching.co.uk. If you go to the top right-hand corner, you'll see a button that will allow you to book a consultation call with me. But on that same page, there's a contact form to get in touch with me. And yes, we would love to hear from you if you want to talk to us. Next time, in a fortnight, we will be doing our second interview. About 4 weeks ago, we interviewed Jamie Webb, and we spoke to him. This time, we're going to be interviewing Marion Hill, who is one of the UK's top shadow work practitioners. So if you want to know what that is and what Marion does for a living, then please come back and join us. We'll be interviewing her and finding out about shadow work. So thank you very much for joining us today, and that's everything we've got for you. So take care and see you in a fortnight's time.
Thanks, everyone. See you in a fortnight.